Today on Inside Utah Politics, the transition of power and the state of the Republican Party. Former Governor and Ambassador John Huntsman Jr. is here to weigh in on where we are and the road ahead. Plus, President Biden creates a special open enrollment period for the Affordable Care Act, how the president plans to get more Americans signed up for coverage, and how long the window will be open.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics, and we do begin today with former Governor John Huntsman Jr. Governor, great to have you back on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Glenn. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure having you as well. Let's get right into the transition to the Biden administration. You have experience on the global level of leadership, and I'd like to know what you think of the administration and the transition that has happened so far 1 month in.
Well, they've only been at it a month, and it's hard to give out grades after a single month, but things like canceling the XL pipeline, which was critical to our energy security, and providing cheap and affordable energy to a lot of American consumers was one of the early calls, which I think was a disaster. But as seen from abroad, it's a terribly confusing environment when you have the United States shifting in major ways its view of how it handles foreign policy and even some aspects of domestic policy. There used to be a lot more consistency from administration to administration, even from Republicans to Democrats and vice versa. Today we just don't have that anymore, and it makes it very difficult for us to maintain a consistent and reliable relationship with all of our partners and friends and allies abroad.
Let's dig into that a little more, because you've been an ambassador in China and Russia. You know how it works there. When they see those transitions, and even our adversaries, how do you think this is being viewed from a world perspective?
Well, our allies and our friends want us to be strong. They want us to pay down our debt. They want us to rebalance our economy. They want us to trade. Our enemies love to see us divided. So I've lived both in China and in Russia. And the divided state we find ourselves in today plays right into their playbook. They know that the only way that the United States can be defeated is for us to defeat ourselves. And they're hoping that the current political divide, which is a very extreme situation as far as I can tell, is something that is going to make us basically feckless as a country in terms of any ability to exert our influence and to project our values abroad, which has always been liked by our friends and allies and hated by our adversaries.
I'd like to get your thoughts on the executive order. We've seen several of them in the first month, even in the first few days. What's your thought on every time the White House changes party, we see these sweeping reforms this way? Is it good for the country?
It is what America has become famous for in recent years from a political standpoint. So we've seen dozens of executive orders. President Trump had over 200 executive orders. President Reagan had 300 executive orders. FDR had 3,000 executive orders, as compared to contrasted to John Adams, who had one. So you could argue that executive orders really have become a way for incoming presidents to get their way, circumventing Congress and circumventing an open and transparent process, which is not good for our system longer term, but that's exactly what has happened. And I wish it weren't that way, but that's how people get in and get things done quickly.
Let's get into the Republican Party. How do you define the current state of the party as it sits today?
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being total catastrophe and 10 being perfect harmony, I'd say that we're probably about a 2.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. It's not good for debating ideas. It's not good for coalition building. It's not good for bringing new people in. The only way you win in politics, Glenn, is by building and expanding coalitions. And the way the party sits right now, it's scaring people away. And the more people you scare away, the less likely it is that you're going to win an election. Mm-hmm. So, listen, we're a two-party country. People talk about alternative and third-party movements. That just doesn't work. Our system is built for two, and we work best when we've got two robust, competing, debating political parties. And right now, that's not the case. And I know we're going to rebuild. That's what we do in America. But right now, we're in kind of a dangerous moment.
I'd like to get your thoughts on the way President Trump went out. What do you think?
Well, he lost the election, and I think how he used the bully pulpit as opposed to the American tradition of a peaceful transfer of power. We're a very unique country in that we have a tradition and a history of a peaceful transfer of power. Most countries can't pull that off, and it's been a singularly unique thing for the United States. This was the first time that we really have not been able to do that, and it does not bode well for how we sit, how the younger generation sees politics in the United States, and how the rest of the world sees us. So I would have much preferred, and there were a lot of things I liked that President Trump did. I would have much preferred to see him use that moment as a unifying moment for the country, bringing people in, transferring power peacefully, and providing the message to our adversaries abroad that we might disagree politically, but when it comes time to our constitutional duties of transferring power, we're going to do it in ways that make America shine.
Let's talk about moving forward. I see the next few years as critical for the Republican Party. What type of leader would you like to see rise to carry the mantle? Well,
the years ahead are absolutely critical. It's a little bit like 1976 in the aftermath of Vietnam and Watergate, where people wrote off the Republican Party, and 4 years later, Ronald Reagan emerged. This is just how parties go. It's how we move here in America. We innovate, we rebuild, and we recreate. I think the Republican Party has to stick to its roots of liberty, of constitutional government, and basically of strong economic growth and watching our spending. We are not watching our spending. Just recently we passed $3.5 trillion, not in debt, but in our deficit payments that come due every year. This is a dangerous place for us to be. And traditionally the Republicans have been the party that has been strong on economic growth and has watched our spending, but this has gotten out of control, and under Republicans as well. And if we get back to these fundamental tenets, I have no doubt that we can be a winning party going forward.
Recent polls continue to show, this would be both from Quinnipiac and from Gallup, that former President Trump still has a lot of support within the Republican Party, potentially even the front runner for 2024. Do you think that's the right move and direction for the party to go in?
Well, listen, he has a voice and he has a following, and he is a factor within the Republican Party, probably the factor. That doesn't mean he's going to be the factor by 2024. Parties grow and expand, new voices are embraced, new ideas are put forward, and in a free market system like we have here in the United States, it's impossible to say, sitting right here where we are today, that 2024 is going to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. But listen, he'll have a third, maybe more of the party that will be very, very loyal to him. And I get back to what I said earlier. If the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, isn't smart enough to build a broad coalition and accommodate and find connecting values that bring people who follow President Trump, those who might not follow President Trump, but having some unifying themes that bring everyone together under one tent, that's going to be the winning formula. If we're not able to do that, then the Republican Party is not going to be a winning party in 2024.
Governor, you have run for president before. It's very common for someone to rise to the nomination after making several attempts. Is this something that you're considering?
No.
Again?
No? No. Running for president is more akin to being in the entertainment industry. I'm not in the entertainment industry. I'm a public servant. And if you like entertainment, and unfortunately the media, which I think have performed an enormous disservice to politics in this country, the way that they too are divided between red and blue camps, mm-hmm. They are forever in search of the daily soundbite, they're ever in search of the daily drama, and politics can't find itself in a good place if that's the way that we're going to roll during campaign season. It's time that we put forward serious solutions and chart out a strategy that's going to carry us well into the second half of this century. It can be done, but it's not going to be done when we use politics as entertainment.
Any thoughts on specific names that you think could pull off what you say needs to be done here, the big tent approach?
You know, this is what is so exciting about politics. You look at the grassroots level, you look at people on Capitol Hill in Washington, you look at governors, you look at members of the private sector. It's an open free market system. Whoever puts forward the best ideas is able to build the broadest coalition of support, generally is going to do pretty well. And it's going to be an open playing field for the next few years, and therefore it's going to be very, very exciting. And chances are there's going to be a lot of redefining of America ahead, because our biggest internal problem, aside from our divide, the fact that we are not e pluribus unum anymore, is our debt. And the greatest external challenge for us is China. And we have yet to be able to put in proper perspective how we're going to deal with that, which is something we haven't had to face in terms of an international challenger in at least 100 years. So there's much to be done. Bring on the debates, let it begin, and let those who have the best ideas rise.
All right, we will watch and see how it plays out. Governor Huntsman, appreciate your insight today.
Thanks Glenn, always a pleasure.
All right, still to come, Millennial Republicans and their expectations and hopes for the party. That's a little bit later in our panel discussion. But first, an oversight hearing on the 2020 election. Congress looking into what led to the election being deemed by some as the most secure in our nation's history. We'll get to that next. This past week, the Biden administration reopening the Obamacare enrollment period, allowing millions of uninsured Americans to sign up for health insurance through May. The White House says the effort is vital to help struggling Americans through the pandemic. Washington correspondent Raquel Martin has the latest.
This special enrollment period is starting now.
From February 15th to May 15th, millions of uninsured Americans will have another chance to sign up for Affordable Care Act insurance.
It's good if you need coverage to get it right away.
Laura Packard, executive director of the nonprofit Get America Covered, says with the pandemic still roaring and millions out of work, it's vital Americans get the care they need.
The research that I've seen can show possibly permanent lung and heart changes to your body if you get sick with COVID.
That's why the White House says it's reopened enrollment and is pouring millions of dollars into spreading the word. But looming in the background is the highly anticipated Supreme Court decision that could eliminate Obamacare altogether.
I think the ACA is going to stick around for a little bit.
Doug Badger, a healthcare policy expert with the Conservative Heritage Foundation, says he doubts the justices will scrap the entire plan, but still wants to see Congress tackle reform.
I think it is very, very expensive for taxpayers. The coverage is not what most people want. And I think there are better ways to address this.
People should still sign up.
Packard says she's also optimistic Obamacare is here to stay. She says Congress should pass reforms in President Biden's proposed $1.9 trillion COVID relief package to bring down costs and expand access further. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
A recent report from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency called the 2020 election the most secure in our nation's history. Lawmakers want to make sure that continues. Washington correspondent Basil John reports.
This was the best administered election I've seen in my career.
Tuesday, Election Assistance Commission Chair Benjamin Hovland told a congressional committee the pandemic did not negatively impact voting because of funding from the CARES Act.
He helped election officials address some of the additional costs associated with running both the largest mail and absentee ballot election most jurisdictions had ever experienced, and making polling places as safe as possible for voters and election workers.
The threats to our democracy are constant and ever evolving.
To keep things running smoothly in the future, Democrats like Illinois Congressman Mike Quigley and Connecticut Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro want to see that extra election funding continue.
We must ensure that EAC has the necessary resources to provide vital support to states and the voting public.
Now more than ever, we need to provide the necessary resources, support that protection of our democracy, secure our elections.
But despite support for more election security, Republicans say the country can't afford to keep paying the $400 billion it spent last year.
We've got this significant debt hanging over future generations' head.
Arkansas Congressman Steve Womack says elections should be locally controlled and funded.
We've got to be careful not to allow more and more of the federal tax dollars to go for what is normally paid for at the more local level.
Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Coming up, the next generation, how Millennial Republicans view the state of the party and the road ahead. That's after the break.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
We turn now to the next generation for our panel discussion on the future of the Republican Party. For that, we have Utah County Clerk Amelia Powers Gardner and former Utah GOP Vice Chair Aaron Starks. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start off with the state of the Republican Party. I'd like to hear from both of you how you define that at this time. We have state parties across the country, specifically North Carolina, Arizona, Pennsylvania come to mind, who are censuring elected officials. We have polls that continue to show former President Trump with a large backing in the Republican Party. Amelia, let's start with you. How do you define the state of your party as we speak?
I think the state of the party is growing and vibrant. We saw great gains at the state level. Even the House of Representatives, people expected the Democrats to make gains, but they didn't. We actually won seats in the Republican Party in Congress, as well as right here in Salt Lake County. For the first time in a decade, we have a veto-proof majority on the county council. I think we're growing.
Aaron, let's get your thoughts. The state of the Republican Party right now.
Well, I think there's really two parties. There's the national party and there's the Utah party. On the national front, I would say we're very fragmented and divided, evidenced by Senator Murkowski in Alaska. The Republican Party wants to censor her now. We're seeing that more and more Republicans are coming forth and not supporting Donald Trump. We're seeing that there's a lot of fragmentation. Here on a state level, we're seeing that that's absolutely the case with a broken caucus system. Many people are very frustrated that the party's not more inclusive. I think we need to unite, and I think that there's a way to do that.
Amelia, I'd like to get your thoughts specifically on the censures we're seeing from state parties across the country. Is that appropriate in your point of view?
I think we need to focus on being an inclusive party. I think the statement released by our state party chair, Derek Brown, was fantastic. It showed that we in the Republican Party, we value individuals, we value individual opinions, and we don't subscribe to cancel culture or groupthink. I think we need to be more inclusive.
Aaron, let's move to the road ahead now. I want to hit on something you talked about, those who have become disenfranchised as a result of the former president. You don't have to look any further than Utah to see that Republicans in our state, by significant numbers, when you take a look at the vote in November, turned against him. He should have done better than 58% in the state of Utah. So how does the party remain relevant in attracting all types in the party?
Great question, and one that I've thought a lot about. I would answer that one by focusing on economic development here in the state. We know that over the past 19 years, the state of Utah has grown by an average of 58,000 people. That's an annual basis. That's like adding the city of Logan 19 times over. Okay? Our current infrastructure as a party does not support growth like that. Therefore, the process is not inclusive. Okay? If you take the area where I live in South Jordan, Utah, it's hard to find space that would support a caucus meeting that would support 2,000 people in my precinct. It won't happen. On top of that, 2 years ago, when I was elected vice chairman of our state party, the party was almost $500,000 in debt. You are perpetually campaigning and fundraising just to keep the party relevant. And with 53,000 people coming to the state, mainly from California and neighboring states in the first place, we don't have the infrastructure to educate them, to make the process inclusive by inviting them to, and also to help them understand why this is important. Therefore, we need to innovate and we need to change. On a national front, we need to focus on ideas and not people. We are not the party of ego. We are not the party of demagoguery. We are not the party of hate. Republicans are known for ideas. We are progressive. We have to get back to our principles, and we have to be pragmatic if we're going to unite and redefine the future for our party.
Amelia, your thoughts on those who may have become disenfranchised over the last couple of years and remaining relevant to them?
Yeah, I think what's important to note is that the Republican Party is not a party about a personality. It's a party about principles. It's a party that represents the working Americans. It's the party that wants more money in their pockets, higher wages, and better health care through opportunity. I think Congressman John Curtis has done a fantastic job of showing us that if we focus on the issues that people care about, like he has the environment, you can stay true to your conservative principles, but represent the issues that people care about, and we will grow our party if we do that.
At the top, though, over the last 4 years, certainly, there has been a lot driven by personality. So as you look to the next 4 years, which are an important time within your party, who would you like to see rise to carry the mantle?
I think we have some great examples right here in Utah. Chairman Derek Brown, he got the party out of debt, focused on elections, focused on issues and principles, and we've seen great wins here. We also have Congressman Curtis, who I mentioned. Nationally, I would love to see Nikki Haley. She's a strong conservative woman who can articulate her views, has served in the military. I think these are the examples we need. Leaders who get things done and represent working America.
Aaron, your thoughts on who will rise to be the standard bearer for the party over the next 4 years?
You know, I'd like to echo those sentiments. I think we need ideas at the forefront of everything that we're doing if we're going to redefine our direction. There are a lot of names that come to mind. John Curtis certainly being one of them. Very grateful for his service to our state. I also like Marco Rubio. I think Marco Rubio has the ability to govern from the middle, to hear both voices. I tell you what, people in my generation, my age, are less concerned about partisan politics and more concerned about a dying infrastructure, a broken immigration system, and deficit spending that is at historic highs. And if we're going to protect the next generation of this country, we need a leader who's going to focus on problem solving and less about infighting, and especially party infighting.
Okay, as I mentioned at the top of the segment, recent polls, we've seen them from Quinnipiac and Gallup recently, still show that the president is very popular and has a strong base, or the former president, I should say, has a strong base in the Republican Party. Do you want to see him be the nominee again in 2024?
I do not, no. I think the party, I think the country is better than Donald Trump. He doesn't represent the best of our American way, our values, and frankly, he doesn't represent the best of the Republican Party. Again, we need somebody who's going to push the needle in these areas that matter most. After 4 years, the national deficit is higher, our national debt is higher, we're no closer to fixing abortion, our immigration system is more broken than it was 4 years ago. We are about free-thinking, enterprising principles that will govern and lead us forward. This is not the party of Lincoln.
All right.
Look at the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. That has not been perpetuated and carried into the 21st century. And Donald Trump certainly does not resonate with people who are traditionally Republican.
Amelia, your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that our generation is really looking for three things moving forward. Number one, we want an inclusive party. We want a party like Utah has, where we have one senator that voted yes and one that voted no on impeachment, and we respect both of them. We want leaders that focus on issues, and we want leaders that solve problems. We're less concerned about a partisan win than we are about actually making progress and moving forward in solving these issues: infrastructure, the economy, and the environment.
Okay, we have a minute left, so we'll split it evenly, about 30 seconds each. Your generation, the millennials, what role will you play in Republican leadership in the near future? Aaron, let's start with you.
Well, millennials are, as I said, 1 in 5 28-year-olds still live in their parents' basement here in the United States. That's because we have an economy that doesn't support innovation. It's not fast moving. We're seeing that the world around us is moving a lot faster than we are because we can't get our act together in Washington, D.C. The future of our party, specifically the next generation of leadership, they have to be people that have ideas and are willing to overcome differences, willing to communicate, willing to seek first to understand, the ability to empathize with those who think different. That's the value of America. It's the backbone of who we are.
All right, Amelia, the last 30 seconds are yours. What role do you see your generation playing in party leadership?
First, we need to bring the solutions. We need to be a solutions-oriented party, and we need to bring action. I transformed our office from the epicenter of dysfunction to a model for the country by bringing in the solutions, and that's what we want from our leaders: the issues that matter and the solutions, and that's what we can bring as a generation.
Okay, very interesting conversation. Appreciate both of you for contributing. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. Real Women Run is hosting a winter webinar series. The next one is this Wednesday, February 24th, on the organization's YouTube channel. It will focus on what it's like to run for office. The state legislature now 5 weeks into this year's session. Closing day is Friday, March 5th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook and interact there. Just log on and search Glenn Mills ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.